Good evening. The news gang is here. Is the end of freedom at hand? The president's meeting that never was, and it is not a bed of roses out there in the counties. Or do they have enough beds? Also, 15,000 cases and counting, but who is on trial? Plus, did someone say the Senate is the house of wisdom? You have to wonder what formula they used. Kaikai hasn't kicked hard enough on the Senate. Madness. Bashir is punching holes into the government's animal farm. And how about a hopeful angle? Yvonne is still taking that break, and Jamila too is still away. But the memo is that we have a guest on the gang. Wanjiro Gikonyo, the executive director of the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA.
We have 796 people having tested positive for this disease. And this brings the total number of positive cases in the country to 15,601.
That's obviously the big news today, 700 new cases and counting. That is COVID-19. And that is a discussion we will have on the second half of this show. But we'll start with the other big story today, which has been happening at the Senate. And we had quite, I dare call it madness over there. Members of the Senate walking out saying shame, shame, shame. But let's get some sound bites there, starting with the House Speaker there, Kenneth Lusaka.
Order, senators. Order. There is only one speaker in this Senate. And the chair, order. And the leader of majority had requested that we have this sitting today. Of course, this is a matter of great concern. Therefore, I want to ask the chair of the committee to hasten this process, because it's taking exceedingly long. We must provide leadership. Order, members. Order, members. I'm therefore directing that the House adjourns until Tuesday, 28th July 2020.
Francis, it doesn't get crazier than that. What was really going on there? Because, I mean, one would imagine that by now, surely we would have agreed on this money, this formula of sharing revenue among the counties.
Total lack of leadership in the Senate today. And what the Senate is basically doing is postponing a problem. This is the third time that senators have been unable to agree on the revenue sharing formula. Remember, before they adjourned the previous time, they couldn't agree. Then a special sitting was called, they couldn't agree. Today's sitting was a special sitting yet again, called to try and find a solution to the contentious revenue sharing formula. Yet again, no solution. And there is also a likelihood that when they meet next, and Tuesday as ordered by the Speaker, they probably may not agree. And this shows how sensitive the question of sharing resources is, but also a lack of leadership, I would say, in the Senate, because ultimately it is the Senate that will make this decision on how revenue will be shared among the 47 county governments. The 316.5 billion shillings, that was the second phase, because the first phase was agreeing on the share between the national government and the county governments. And now, what should be the formula of sharing the resources between the 47 county governments seems to be a problem, because some counties using the CRA proposed formula will obviously lose some money. 18 of them actually will lose some money, and 29 will gain some money. But eventually, the Senate will have to decide. But the import of this, Joe and Linus, is that county governments cannot pass their budgets. Because on what basis, how much money are you budgeting for? Some have prepared draft budgets, but they cannot conclusively deal with that question because it is this formula that moves us to the next discussion on the passage of the County Allocation Revenue Act. And before the formula is agreed on, you cannot proceed to that discussion because counties must be told how much money they will get using what formula. There's a proposal on how you can get out of this situation, a proposal by Senator Sakaja. And before we even go there, what is the contentious issue here? The proposed formula from CRA talks about a basic share of 14%, population 18%, health 22%, poverty index 10%, agriculture 22%, land area or landmass 5%, urban areas 5%, roads 2%, prudence in fiscal prudence 1%, and fiscal effort 1%. And the contention here is on land area and population. And senators eventually will have to agree because this habit of kicking the can down the road won't wash.
Interesting, Linus. I mean, looking at the speaker there trying to maintain order in the House. I mean, this wasn't that day that he was going to do this because we've seen that as being a challenge in similar controversial situations. But, I mean, just sad, as Francis is saying that one more time the can is being kicked down the road and the counties stand to lose in this respect, delayed budgets. In fact, some of the counties, from what I understand, had those draft budgets that Francis is talking about, but they are based on last financial year's figures because many of them did not expect to get anything less than what they have been getting anyway.
You see, Joe, the most unfortunate thing, what it's looking like in the House is as if the House doesn't own the can that is being kicked down the road. There's lack of ownership in the House of this particular subject matter. You can tell that the senators have not really put themselves onto this, especially those who are proposing this formula. We're not seeing them doing the spade work on the floor of the House, trying to persuade or trying to build a consensus. Everything looks like it is happening elsewhere, and then they come to the House. This is really an indictment of the Senate because one would have expected to see leadership on the floor of the House. Contentious debates, including on a bill or on a motion like this one, would always play out very, very energetically on the floor of the House. There's no harm in that. Let the senators disagree on the floor of the House. But what did we see today? Even the adjournment itself, Joe, did not appear to me very procedural. What would normally happen is the Speaker would put it to a debate, a bit of a debate as a motion that the House adjourns, and then it's proposed, they discuss that, and then it could even go to a vote. What did we see today? It looked to me like maybe the invocation of Standing Order number 1, where the Speaker can make whatever decision he pleases. But I thought, in terms of how the House should adjourn, that was unprocedural. But the bottom line is the senators have once again disagreed. They are not getting a formula. They're not getting a formula on how to progress this particular very contentious revenue sharing arrangement.
Very sad. And now we can bring in Wanjiru Gikonyo. She heads the Institute for Social Accountability. Wanjiru, I know you have been tracking issues of devolution for a long time, and whereas you spend a lot of time with the sort of vertical division of revenue, but here we are, standoff in the House. For the third consecutive time, the Senate doesn't seem to agree on this third generation formula that is supposed to determine how counties share revenue. As someone who's been tracking devolution and who actually works on that on a daily basis, how does this make you feel when you see this standoff in the Senate?
Thank you so much, Joe, and good to be with you. I think we wish we would see this level of energy being applied by the Senate on all matters, in that it is only when there's a risk of losing revenue that we get this kind of very intense discussion. And obviously, it's inevitable that it would be contentious, it would be fought out. But at the underlying this, we have to remember that part of the problem is not the formula that was recommended, it's the money that's going to be lost by counties. Because nobody wants to lose money. I think what CRA has done is the right thing. They are giving us a formula that's moving more towards what is the desirable position, which is looking at service delivery, looking at development gaps, moving away from the very basic formula that was there before that really was not considerate of some of the development needs of the counties. So this is, the formula in itself is a good thing, it's a good step. But the problem is the formula comes at a time when there is not enough money to cushion the counties that are going to lose. And the reason we don't have enough money is because of the standoff we had last year around the division of revenue. National government has committed itself excessively in terms of debt. And so a lot of money, in fact, almost 1 trillion this year is going to pay to debt repayment. And because of that, the amount going to the counties remains at 316.5 B. So when you then apply the new formula, some counties will lose. Now, the amount CRA had recommended for sharing of revenue last year was 335 B. The amount they then got is 316. So if we had had the expected increment as to the shareable revenue, this problem would be alleviated. This is not the case. So right now, actually, CRA has even proposed some scenarios on how to move forward because there appears to be a deadlock. And I think senators are then thinking to themselves, how will I explain to my those I represent that I approved the formula that lost money to my counties? 200 million is a lot of money when you're talking to a county, and some, there's 17 billion across the board that's lost. Some are losing up to 300 million. It's a lot of money. So, I think at the beginning, Linus mentioned that not much wisdom was evident in the House. We do need that wisdom. Otherwise, we have a court ruling that might see Parliament dissolved because of a recent court ruling that was made on division of revenue, on the CRA recommendations and the force that they have. So it is a difficult one, but we do need political leadership. I fully agree with you. Now, the last point is this formula has been sitting with Parliament for the last 1 year. So again, the political leadership, really, this discussion needed to have started and been as heated right through. So there are very many points where we can talk about the failure of leadership. The timing, the failure to approve last year's audit reports, the failure to approve the census findings. There are so many events where we can say we have failures by Parliament that have kind of culminated in today's spectacle. And it is a spectacle, and it's an unfortunate spectacle. And yes, Kenyans deserve better than the show we saw today.
Yeah.
There's this question, Wanjiru, that I think has brought us where we are, because there's the argument I think I've heard from some of the counties that are losing money, which happen to be some of the counties that have been left behind development-wise for 50 plus years since independence, and there's an equity argument that they're making, that in the immediate term, what this means is that they're actually going to lose money, and therefore some of their development programs will end up being compromised. Isn't that fair?
Now, if you look at the analysis that was done, and IDP did some good analysis. We were making submissions to the Senate around, I think it was end of January, when there were public hearings on this process. And the way the formula has been structured, if you look at the formula that we had previously, and you look at the populous counties, then they are losing. And then also, some of the counties that are now benefiting, and there's an argument that, well, these counties already have the infrastructure, but there's also very deep poverty with very high numbers in those counties. So when you talk about equity isn't just the numbers. There's more to that. And equity isn't just the overall indicator. What we want with devolution is we want to ensure that minimum service standards are attained across the board. And that's what this formula tries to do. It tries to be reasoned in terms of service delivery, in terms of development gaps, in terms of total numbers, so that you can even this out. It also recognizes that there's an equalization grant that goes to counties that are, facing deeper pockets of need, and that equalization grant then balances out. What it doesn't yet begin to address is potential revenues, because the status of counties is going to change once natural resources like oil revenues and things like that come into the equation. But no, I think there was a need there are counties that will lose, but if you look at those counties, you look at their absorption levels, you will, really get the sense that the previous formula had overcompensated. And much as it's very difficult to kind of roll back the compensation for counties that have been marginalized, it was necessary because there's also marginalization and deep poverty in the more populous counties. So a Kenyan in any part of the country needs a basic standard of service delivery. And that's across the board. And I think this formula is moving us towards the issue of costing, nearer to costing of functions, because it's becoming a little bit more, bringing in a little bit more focus on service delivery as opposed to the broad parameters that we were using before. So no, I don't agree that we are taking away from those that don't have and giving to those that have. We need to go beyond those broad parameters to look at services and what it takes to deliver services. This is the kind of conversation Senate should have had. And really, we should have started having these conversations at the county level, because residents in those counties need to understand what revenue share is about. So actually, not just revenue share, even division of revenue. We need those conversations on the ground. Because like I said, and I'll say it again, we're scrapping over what is left after the national government has taken its share. And that share is eating into what is left to share among the counties. So to my mind, the bigger elephant in the room is the fact that the total share going to counties was not adjusted for inflation. has not grown in line with what the needs of the counties are. Is below what the counties would have needed in the first place based on the proposed allocation to counties. And this is what's exacerbating this fight.
But Wanjiru, critics of this formula would be outraged by your suggestion that there was overcompensation of the counties that had lagged behind. Yet you remember very well the conversations around the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and especially the Bomas process, not just in 2010, but even in 2005, where the issue of marginalization really came up, and you correctly pointed out the issue of the Equalization Fund. But Mr. Sheikh, who is writing from, is a Wajir resident, is saying basically what this formula is trying to do is to reintroduce sessional paper number 10 of 1965 through the back door, which is tech development to high potential areas.
I really don't agree with that. And the reason I'll say that, and I'll reiterate again, is because when you look at the emphasis that this formula gives, is they have broken down, they're almost asked, the question that they're kind of asking is what does it take to deliver services to Kenyans across the board? And based on that criteria, we then share the revenue. So that they've broken it down into the basic revenue. You see, we had a basic revenue share that was quite large, and that was pegged on looking at those inequalities. We then had the land mass portion of the revenue that was also equally large. That was again. And of necessity, but it was quite large and that was skewing it. The population was not coming in as a factor. So now the population is coming in as a factor, but there is also health coming in as a factor, poverty, agriculture, infrastructure, land, and then, revenue potential is really small, fiscal compliance is very small. So what we have is the parameters have increased. Now, once you have parameters, then the politics of it aside, you're then asking the question, based on these criteria, which are basic, health is a basic need, agriculture, majority of employment, you're talking about livestock, whatever form, majority of employment is in those sectors. Roads infrastructure is there, land is still there, population. So once you have these criteria, the question is moving from the simplistic formula, which intuitively sounds correct, to saying, let's talk about services. And let's get a little bit, and I'm trying to avoid the word scientific, because it's, but we are moving more towards, let's have a discussion of what it costs to reach Kenyans, whether they are in Wajir or Mandera, and let's be equitable so that we don't discriminate against the poor who might be in higher population areas, who are equally entitled to services. So no, I don't agree that we are moving money to exacerbate marginalization. I think the parameters have been expanded so that more of those who are marginalized can be captured, so that we don't imagine marginalization only exists in one part. Now, to the point you're saying about the sessional paper, I think the problem we have in Kenya is, and I'll say this again, we are fighting for the scraps that remain. The bigger problem is where is the bulk of the money going? And this is about the accountability of, especially around the national development projects, the flagship projects. Where is that money going? because that is where the lion's share is going and is squeezing out the money that would go to counties for service delivery. So I really wish the conversation would become more holistic, so that we don't, fight over an amount that marginalizes the poor in high populous areas, ignoring the fact that counties need more money. That is really the issue.
Let's go a bit practical here, Wanjiru. And Mandera County is set to lose about 2 billion. And Kiambu County is set to benefit by about 1.2 billion. With your argument about poverty elevation on both ends, in a practical sense, what would that mean in Kiambu? Because in Mandera it would mean loss of the ability to have roads, water, and basic necessities like that.
If you look at that, if you look at the population and then look at the poverty head count and then look at the distribution, for instance, and I think if we try and avoid the political aspect of it, because you don't want to say, I'm a big pro-devolutionist. We know there is poverty across the board, and we don't want to try and make it look like it's one political faction against the other. If you look at Kiambu on a practical level, as the second most populous county, and then if you look at the distribution in terms of wealth in the county, and then if you look at the needs of the population in Kiambu, then this additional 1B will be distributed accordingly, so that the deepest poverty in Kiambu, because it does exist, is alleviated. Of course, when you're pulling out money from Wajir, and we are not then saying that residents there shouldn't be covered, but the issue here is there's an equalization grant, but even before we get to the equalization grant, the assessment that has been made based on these criteria is possibly, yes, there may have been an overcompensation. The overcompensation is, and I think the argument that the CRA made is that there are some infrastructure developments that need to be made in a medium-term manner, so that if you're building roads infrastructure, you are not doing it at the expense of somebody's basic health provision. So we have had underinvestment in infrastructure, roads infrastructure, in agriculture. In fact, investment in agriculture is falling. The rate of increase in investment is falling across the board. Despite counties putting more money in agriculture, those investments are still below what is required. So the point here is we need roads, but we also need health and we need food. Countries do not grow across the board if you don't invest in these basics, which is health, agriculture, housing. Basics must be covered. Roads infrastructure, very, very important, but there are options in terms of roads infrastructure. So the problem we have when it comes to this kind of standoff is that Article 6.2 anticipates that devolution will be conducted on the basis of consultation, cooperation, between national county level and also within counties. So dialogue, we have a devolution that's based on dialogue and consensus building. The problem we have with our politics is the winner takes all. Now, we've seen winner takes all when it's national government and the president is saying mutadu, take it or leave it. We have the same mentality. But
isn't this formula itself a winner takes all formula? Because proponents of it are only arguing on the strength of numbers It's about the population size. So majority wins, winner takes all.
Like I said, when we looked at the formula, it's not just numbers, it's not just population, because it's brought in criteria that weren't there. And actually this formula begins to look more like the formula of countries like India or countries like South Africa. And, we borrowed heavily from the devolution architecture and including the fiscal sharing architecture, give or take. The commission there has a little bit more protection than we do here. But it still makes recommendations, and it makes recommendations based on its analysis.
And sorry, I wanted to actually ask you, Wanjiru, about the arrangement, and it's good you are drawing the South African example. The Commission on Revenue Allocation in Kenya, and then the second stage that takes the duty to discuss and even come up with modalities of sharing to the Senate. Could this have been a structural mistake on the part of the law? Maybe we should have left it at CRA.
It's never left at CRA. But the difference is that the process is linked to our political structure. And in South Africa, I think the big difference is that the local level of government is very strong. The revenue raising powers at that level are very strong. The autonomy is very strong. And also, partly because of the apartheid structure, the local level of government had, the local political culture there was quite well established. So devolving to this level, there was, those structures were very strong. In Kenya, the local level of government had been, really hollowed out and was really a mere shell. So our local governments are actually weak. They're now trying to find their space. And then also in South Africa, during the negotiation level, you've got the representation of the municipal level, the provincial level, and then the national government. That representation is also like here along party lines, but possibly with a stronger culture of constitutionalism, because there are, referrals to the constitutional court. In Kenya, we don't have a constitutional court, but also the political representation there balances out these discussions. So in Kenya, we have a lot of masked discussions where counties, if you look at the constitution of IBEC, the voice of the counties there, much as it's present at the Senate level, it's not the political wing or the political arm of the devolved government is not as strong in the IBEC conversation. But I think the biggest weakness we have was, first of all, and it sounds like a broken record, is a lack of constitutionalism. We have a government that has really undermined the foundation of sharing of
all right, Wanjiru, we need to take a quick break. Thank you very much. We are taking a short break, and Newsgang will be right back.
Wonder why you're not receiving